Barry Ginley. Barry is the Equality and Access Officer at the Victoria and Albert Museum in England, where he has worked since 2002. The role is varied, dealing with all aspects of the museum's work, including developing policies and strategy, design of buildings and galleries, staff training, and advising on accessible talks program. Barry became a member of the Built Environment Access Panel for the London Legacy Development Corporation in February 2012 and has been appointed as an advisor to the Paralympic Legacy Advisory Group. Mr. Barry Ginley, welcome.
Thank you.
You're our next speaker.
Okay, would you be able to move the slides on?
I can do this.
Okay, I'll measure it. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. That's one giant leap going from Disney to the V&A. So I shall try and sort of match our first presentation. But on screen should be my first slide, which is a picture of the Victoria and Albert Museum. Just quickly, I'll mention who and what we are. We're the world's greatest museum of art and design, so I'm told. And we're based in South Kensington in London, and we have over 7 miles of gallery space. It's 7 buildings, all interconnected by 18 split levels. So everybody gets lost in the V&A. So it's been my role for the past 12 years to try and make it as accessible as possible. And one of the ways that we can do this is through our customer services, and our staff are a sort of valuable sort of resource for us. If we go on to slide 2, please. So, who are disabled people in the UK? Well, about 11 million people in the UK can be defined as having a disability. Now, this is out of a population of about 62 million. So it's around about 18 to 20%. And on screen, there should be a photo of some blind people at the museum as part of our touch tour, some deaf people taking part in a British Sign Language talk, some wheelchair users, and also on the fourth photo on the right, you probably don't see any disabled people in there. Oh, thank you. You do see a disabled person in there, in a wheelchair, but who knows how many of the others are disabled? And the reason why I put this up is because of people with hidden disabilities, whether it be mental health, diabetes, epilepsy, etc. So it's important not just to focus on those that you can see have a disability, it's those that don't. And as we go on, I'll explain the reason why we have a focus on people that you can't tell if they have a disability. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So my next slide asks, about the services for, why we make services accessible for disabled people. Well, in the UK, it's estimated that disabled people and their families have an annual spend of £50 billion. What that is in US or Canadian dollars, I haven't got a clue, but it's going to be a lot more. And so, it's a major market, and it's a major sort of business opportunity. But what we're really guided in the UK is, well, originally was the Disability Discrimination Act that came into law in 1995, and then in 2010 merged into the Equalities Act with 115 other pieces of legislation to bring sort of disability in line with race relations and so on. So that's sort of our major driver. But one that I sort of try and practice in sort of inclusive design is access is a solution for everybody. and hopefully you should see a photo of a lady going into one of our lifts with a pushchair. If a lift and ramps work just as well for people with pushchairs as they do for wheelchair users or elderly people. So, you know, we've put a lot in place with the physical build of the environment. If you go on to the next slide, please. So, what has the V&A done to help disabled people? Well, for the past 12 to 15 years, we've redeveloped our site. It's a Grade 1 listed heritage site, but it's now 100% wheelchair accessible. And this means when we've been redeveloping the site, we've redeveloped our galleries. So we've developed a new gallery interpretation policy. So it introduces interactives, touch objects. There's some areas where you can actually sort of dress up in some medieval clothing. So it makes it sort of a bit more relevant to sort of, you know, what the visitor wants. You know, you don't want just to go and look at objects in glass cases. But to assist our visitors when they do come on site, we provide wheelchairs. We also provide walking frames, and our walking frames we ensure have a seat on, so therefore, because I mentioned the distance in our galleries, you know, it's nice to be able to sit down, so if you can't make it to a seat, you've got one already there. We have sound enhancement equipment for tours, of which have loop capability. In our National Art Library print and drawing study room, we have screen reader and magnification technology, so people can go and do their research on art. And we also have a scanning pen available to visitors, which has been so popular somebody took one home with them, which was, so it proved it worked and they enjoyed it, but could they send us the money so we can buy a new one? So, you know, we're not just looking at the physical, again, we're looking at the intellectual and sort of, you know, and how we can assist visitors when they get here. If we go on to the next slide, please. So, one of the ways we attract people is through an accessible website. And if anybody from the Canadian government is here, you may wish to listen to this next point. Seeing as it's been a bit of a bone of contention about accessible websites for visually impaired people in Canada for the past few years. So on the screen is the link to the V&A site and an image of our disability page. From our home page is a disability and access link. It takes you to the page that's on screen. It gives you information of how to get to the museum, what facilities are available, what education programs are available, so on. So it's a one-stop shop. And because prior to this page, you used to have to go through resources for education events and facilities to know about anything about lifts or, and then there was no information whatsoever about parking. So this is sort of, you know, an important element to providing accessibility, because disabled people actually look on the website before attempting to come out to your venue, because what's the point in travelling when there's not going to be any accessibility? So, you know, marketing is a major issue, and one of the other ways we do market to our visitors is through local disability societies, and also to people that have attended our events in the past. We keep them on a mailing list and let them know of any events that are forthcoming. If we go on to the next slide, please. But staff training is the key for us for on-site delivery. And the training I've tried to develop over the past 12 years is initially to break down the attitudinal barriers of our staff. So therefore we're saying disabled people can't come into the museum. I went to one of our branch museums to do a talk on equality and diversity, and the guard on the door said, "You can't come in with that guide dog." He said it's against museum policy. So I showed him my ID and said, "I write museum policy," and so on. So, and that was a bit disappointing because, you know, in 1998, I was the first successful guide dog owner to win a case under the Disability Discrimination Act, because the operations manager of a cinema refused to let me in because he said my dog was a fire hazard. Well, she'd never spontaneously combusted and she doesn't smoke, so how she's a fire hazard, haven't got a clue. So it was disappointing to have it at the V&A. So different, training packages are important, not just one-offs. We start our training at staff induction. So as soon as the staff come into the museum, we do a basic introductory, then we'll do disability awareness training, and then look at specific disabilities, whether it be visual, deaf, mental health, so on. And only last week I ran some training for our families, schools and young people's team on how to make some of their services more accessible. We trained some of our front of house staff, about 40 members of front of house staff, in British Sign Language. So therefore, when deaf people came in, we could give them a welcome in their preferred language. And one of our staff was very proactive when seeing people signing in the gallery one day and thought, I'll go and use my skill on them and ask if I can assist them. Walked over, started to sign, and they looked at him blankly. They were actually using Mexican Sign Language. But as I say, 10 out of 10 for that positive approach, and it's people like that really do make our service sort of more accessible. So that's sort of what we try to do with our staff. We go on to the next, please. Because of my work and my link with the London Legacy Corporation, which now manage the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park, where the 2012 Olympics were held, to attract people to London, we wanted disabled people to have a great experience. So Destination London was developed. It's a free online training package aimed at the hospitality hotel industry, and just to give people sort of the tools to be able to welcome disabled people when they come to their venues. The link's on the screen, so I can make it available later. But it was important, I felt, that the V&A, because we actually have been held as best practice by the Employers Forum on Disability in the UK as best practice for our customer services. So that was one of the reasons why we were asked to have involvement. And then if we can go on to my final slide, please. So my final slide is what our visitors say. And I wonder if one of my colleagues would be kind enough to read out the quotes on the screen, please.
The quote says, "I would also like to say the information you give on your website about disabled access is most useful, not only within the museum, but getting to the various entrances around the site." You want me to read the second quote?
Yes, please.
Second quote says, "I was delighted with Alan's unfazed approach to making sure we saw what we wanted to, even if it took a while, not trying to scurry us out of the way just because the sighted people wanted to home in on the same subjects we did. We were not second-class citizens." And the third quote says, "Many, many thanks for this very useful information, and I must say I am very impressed at the service the museum offers disabled people. Prior to my illness, I worked for the European Commission as a policy officer in the disability unit, and I can tell you that not many organizations offer as much support to disabled people."
And it's quotes from visitors such as that really sort of makes my job. It's so easy to complain, and we get a lot of complaints. But it's great that people take time to give that feedback, and since we've started all of our staff training, our complaints have dropped dramatically. So the whole approach must be working. So thank you for your time.
We will take questions from the floor. You were very... Monsieur?
I'd like to know about your experience on 3D. I'd like to know about your experience with tactile displays and whether they work or they don't work. Which ones do work, if they do work? What's your experience on that?
Okay. It's difficult to say what works and what doesn't work because there's so many different variations of tactile displays. I was once asked if we could produce a tactile map for the museum. Well, you would need a little small truck to carry it around because of the complexity of our building. Plus, it was going to cost us over £15,000 to produce. And by the time we got it produced, it would have been out of date because of some of our new galleries. So it's really down to the individual perspective. We use what's known as swell paper to give diagrams of the galleries in some of our books, and they're normally accompanied by tactile images which may relate to our paintings or our stained glass. And so on. So we include it there just so people get an understanding of the area. There are more sort of interactive maps, tactile maps that are in use now. Some are better than others. I've worked with the Royal National Institute for Blind People in the UK on their Map for All, which is good, but it has its limitations. So it really depends upon the environments that you're working in and what you really want to achieve.